Day broke through the glass panes high above us, its grey light straining through cigarette haze and factory dust. The bell had just sounded, its clang ricocheting across the cement walls like a final judgment. I shrugged off my overalls, streaked with ink and oil, and zipped up my battered satchel over the violin case inside. My shoulders ached from hours bent over rollers and presses. Everyone was filing out, steel doors rumbling open, boots scuffing on concrete slick with yesterday's rain. Hector, thick-necked and sunburnt, snorted as I approached. "Hey, Paganini," he called out, grinning, the others snickering. "Wanna play us a sonata on the punch card?" Laughter lapped at my heels as I hurried past. "Bet he dreams of curtains and applause with hands that only know grease," another worker said, voice pitched so I could hear. I bit my lip, the shame thick in my throat. I wrapped my arms tighter around my violin case. A gust of cold air strung my eyes as I stepped outside, diesel fumes mixing with the scent of wet earth. The streets were empty, yellow lights buzzing overhead. I kept my head down, boots thumping along cobblestone to the bus stop. The violin jabbed at my back, both comfort and accusation. At the curb, I caught my reflection in a shuttered bakery window, tired face, dark circles, stubble coming in rough and uneven, faded work overalls, cracked shoes. In my dreams, I wore tails and polished shoes, but who could believe in dreams here? By the time the number 64 hissed up and swayed to a stop, I'd forced my mind onto the music. Dvorak tonight, I could rehearse in my head. The bus was mostly empty, just a few old women and a baker dozing. While the city awoke to clattering carts and distant barking, I replayed passages, fingered invisible notes. It was always like this, the music against the world, each insistence of the violin another small rebellion, minuscule and private. After the factory, I would run, ankle sore, across the city to the basement of the conservatory. There, before my shift cleaning, I'd steal time with the second-hand instrument I'd saved years to buy, scraping at impossible passages while the world above bustled in ways I barely knew. Home was a cramped apartment I shared with my mother, high-ceilinged and cold. She sat in the kitchen, the morning's mate cooling beside her, hair pinned up, eyes searching the morning paper. "You're late," she muttered, barely looking up. "The bus," I explained, unwinding my scarf. I kept my violin case close, resting it on the cracked linoleum. She pressed her lips together. "You maybe should work more shifts, help your mother instead of chasing that thing." I looked at her, at the tired line of her shoulders. Whenever she said "that thing," she glanced at the violin as if it might leap up and shatter her cups. "I'll find something better soon," I said. I didn't add the rest, "or I'll play on stage before I die." She wouldn't believe me, no one would. At night our walls were thin, echoes of neighbors' radios, lovers' quarrels, laughter I could never quite understand. I learned to play quietly, cradling the sound, never loud enough to bring complaints. Every so often a high note betrayed me. Once a neighbor pounded the wall and shouted, "Enough, genius, you're not at the Colón." Mocking applause followed, cruel and tinny. Wednesday evening, rain spattered the streetlights, bathing the city in blotted amber. I skirted puddles as I crossed Avenida Corrientes to the conservatory, coat collar up against the bone chill. The basement was empty, lit by a strange blue light leaking through the security glass. That's where I met Raúl. He was mopping the stairs, humming under his breath. I nodded hello. He paused, eyes flicking to my violin. "You play that thing?" he asked, eyes shining beneath droopy lids. "Try to." He smiled, returning to his work slow and deliberate. "Takes guts. My brother played until he was married, then life. Now he works at a bank." He left me alone after that. I played slow scales, wishing for warmth and recognition. Instead, the echo of the practice room amplified every mistake, every finger slip. I remembered my teacher, old man Chalty, slapping my hand with a ruler when I was a boy. "Precision," he'd shout. No one was here to shout anymore, and perfection felt miles away. Weeks ebbed into months. My world shrank to the factory, the bus, the conservatory basement, and then home to mother. I played local cafes sometimes, background to glasses clinking, baristas hurrying, old men squabbling over cards. Money was a dismissive flick, a tip for the noise. I played with my eyes closed, dreaming of velvet seats and painted ceilings. Among the factory men, the taunts became routine. "Give it up," they'd say, "go fix a car." "Music can't feed your mother." I kept silent. Even friends, Daniela who sold lottery tickets and Louis from the butchers, told me to be practical, to aim lower, to want less. I told myself I was used to it, that I could survive on hope and stubbornness. But in the long, breathless hours before dawn, shame gnawed at my stomach and courage felt as thin as a reed. Everything changed almost by accident. It was Carnival week, and Buenos Aires hummed with life after work. Downtown, banners tangled between light poles, musicians busked on corners, and the air was thick with grilled meat. I walked down Reconquista, following distant strains of tango from a park violin slung over my back. On a whim, I stopped to watch a trio playing for a knot of tourists. One violin, one guitar, a bandoneon. The violinist was older, silver-haired, nose sharp as a hawk's. I edged closer, breath held. Something called out to me in their sound, true, bright, and sorrowful. When their set finished, I clapped, then turned to leave. The violinist noticed my case. "You play?" he asked, a bit. He laughed, voice deep and light at once. "That's good, I need to rest, want to borrow my spot." I hesitated. The crowd was thinning, filled with people who would never know my shame. What did I have to lose beyond ridicule? Without answering, I took out my violin. My hands shook. It was Vivaldi I played, shaky at first, then bolder as curiosity turned to silence. A little boy snapped his fingers, urging his mother to stay. The bandoneon joined in, improvising. When we finished, there was applause, coins dropping into the open case. Something broke open in me then, a hard shell I'd built around my dreams. My cheeks burned, but not from shame. The silver-haired violinist, Miguel, he told me, squeezed my arm. "You must play in our group," he said. "Every Sunday, yes." I nodded, still breathless. After that, Sundays became sacred. Crowded corners, bright laughter, dancers swirling. Playing in public was a new kind of courage, different from hiding in windowless practice rooms. I learned to embrace the tremble in my hands, to listen for the city's heartbeat in each phrase. That's where Isabella first heard me. She managed a little café near Belgrano, one with battered tables and posters of Piazzolla curling at the edges. She watched from the doorway as I played, her dark hair caught up under a red scarf. After she bought me a coffee. "You sound like a man who's playing for his life," she said, eyes steady. "Maybe I am." We both laughed, sudden and real. She gave me work at the café. Weekend performances, sometimes alone and sometimes with the group. Tips flowed more freely, but so did the pressure. Some nights the nerves wrecked me, a wrong note, an impatient customer, a sneer. I learned to smile, to stand my ground. Word spread, we played everywhere, weddings, plazas, the odd charity gala. We scraped just enough to matter. Miguel was a taskmaster but generous. "Train the ear, trust the hand," he'd say. At home, mother still worried, but I sent cash home and bought her new shoes. I told her less about the ridicule, more about the music. By slow degrees, she softened. But deep down, I still carried the shame, tucked away like an old wound. The factory men's voices echoed inside me. Success felt so far away, a trick of the light gone if you blinked. Years passed in gig seasons, noisy bars, silent dawn bus rides. Isabella and I grew close, sharing long walks through San Telmo's narrow streets. The city changed, but my longing for a stage, the real kind, never faded. I auditioned again and again for the Teatro Colón's student orchestra, always with trembling hands. Each time I left clutching my case, hope battered but not gone. Then one rainy September, I played an open competition. I was past exhaustion, nerves flayed, but that night my music was fearless. I played the Sibelius concerto as if the violin were dragging the sound out of the very marrow of my bones. When the last note faded, the hall buzzed in stunned silence. Judges whispered, conferring. A week later, I received a letter, cream and gold, the Colón's seal shining. I'd been accepted, full scholarship, seat in the conservatory orchestra. Stipend enough to leave the factory for good. On my last day, I left my overalls folded on the hook. As I walked to the gate, Hector looked up from his clipboard. Off to sweep stages now. I looked him in the eye, standing taller than I ever had. "Something like that," I said. He shrugged, unimpressed. "Better be careful you don't trip over all the applause." I heard laughter, but it slid off me. For the first time, courage outweighed shame. Life twisted anew. My days filled with music, rehearsals in grand halls, pulling sound from a sea of strings. My teachers challenged me, faults exposed, strengths nurtured. Each performance built me stronger, rough edges sanded by thousands of listening eyes. A season later, the orchestra toured, and my name appeared on programs beside those I'd once idolized. I wrote letters home, sending tickets mother never used, her nerves too fragile for crowds, and cash she tucked away, too proud to say thank you. Eventually, my photo flashed on café walls where we'd once played for coins. Isabella grinned, still holding my hand through each triumph and terror. It was on a sticky February afternoon, years after leaving the factory, that I returned to my old neighborhood. The city shimmered with heat, fruit stalls spilling watermelons onto the pavement. I wore a simple linen suit, violin on my back, sweat trickling down my spine as I walked the same cracked streets I once hurried down with my head low. Halfway down Rivadavia, I heard loud voices. Workers clustered outside the old factory, the day shift gathering before dispersing to bars and markets. Hector stood in the shade of the doorway, greyer now, belly hanging over his belt. I paused, my heart hammered, but I made myself keep walking past the walls stained with diesel and time. He saw me, eyes narrowing. "Hey, look who it is," he shouted, elbowing his friends. "The maestro returns." Laughter, but less venom now, just surprise. I stopped, looked around. The faces were familiar, the same men, older but unchanged. I nodded, just passing through. Hector slapped a friend's shoulder, full of performance. "Last I heard you were still fiddling for coins. What now you got famous?" I reached into my satchel, pulling out a glossy program, Teatro Colón's season, my name printed in bold alongside renowned soloists. I held it up just enough for the group to see. They leaned in, eyes squinting, disbelief giving way to something else, or confusion. "Is that real?" one asked, voice softer. Hector took it, flipping through. His face changed as he read. "Son of a bitch," he muttered, "you actually did it." A hush grew heavy and uncertain. A few men looked away, ashamed. Others smiled, raggedly, pride leaking through. I took a breath, steady and full. Shame was gone, replaced by something clean and bruised. I glanced up at the crumbling factory, the years pressed around me, all the weight of their laughter and scorn. "It's real," I said, voice steady, no bitterness left. "I'm playing Friday. Anyone can come." Hector hesitated, handing back the program. A strange respect flickered on his face. "May you break a few strings," he said, a factory benediction. I almost laughed. Words spread faster than I expected. That Friday at the Colón's stage door, I recognized faces from the old streets. Factory workers, neighbors, even my mother, lips pinched, clutching her purse. Isabella, radiant, waited by the lobby, dressed bright as a sunrise. When the house lights went down, silence fell like velvet. I walked out, violin poised. The music, familiar yet utterly transformed, rose from the depths of the hall, swelled to touch frescoed ceilings. 100 faces, spellbound. Afterward, backstage, the skeptics waited, some shy, some thunderstruck, none mocking. Hector hung at the edges, hands shoved in pockets. "It was beautiful," he said, words heavy, sincere. I met his gaze. "Thank you," I said, I meant it. The past, every moment of shame, every taunt, every uncertain morning, dissolved in that simple exchange. I understood then, success was never about applause or seats gilded in gold. It was about returning, standing whole before those who doubted, proof plain and irrefutable, letting courage speak where only shame once lived. When I stepped into the city's dusk that night, the world glimmered. The scent of wet earth, the clatter of buses, distant strains of music, all of it shimmered into something possible, something I could finally claim. And with every step home, I walked lighter than I ever had, music and memory entwined, forging the man I'd become.